Always one of the hot topics in property management is security deposit dissolution, returning that security deposit to a tenant. What is fair? What isn't? Every side seems to feel like it's an unfair process every time. And how do we create a different feeling for your customer on the way out when they're not your customer anymore? How do we create a different feeling for you as the landlord when you're trying to say, my property was negatively impacted by someone living in it? And I think it starts with this. Whether you're living in your home, whether I'm living in your home, whether you have a tenant living in your home, if someone is living in your home, there's going to be natural wear and tear. And yet, too often people use that exact terminology to determine if it is normal wear and tear or not, should determine whether it's a security deposit issue or not. And normal wear and tear is so vague. How I use a property and how you use a property is very different. How someone with a pet, what is normal use for someone with a pet, might be very different from what's normal use for someone without a pet. So how do we really determine security deposit damages that need to be recouped and paid to the landlord? And it's as simple as this. Damages are not physical damages to the property. Think in terms of legal damages or financial damages. They are not actually damages to be assessed to the security deposit unless they're actual costs that the landlord paid for to refurbish or fix or repair something that was caused by the tenant, that was not caused through normal use. So a better judgment phrase for how to address any specific item and whether it should be a security deposit issue or not is this damage, is this cost to the landlord that should be taken out of the security deposit related to the misuse, abuse, or neglect of the tenant to monitor their responsibilities under the terms of the lease. Repainting a property after 2 or 3 years, it's something where the landlord thinks it was freshly painted 2 or 3 years ago. I don't want to have to pay to repaint again. And yet it's normal for a tenant to hang things on the wall, to walk up and down the stairs, and there for to be a little bit of rubbing on the stairwell wall, moving in and out furniture, going up and down, and just normal everyday living. So at what point do we say that should be billed to the tenant and what it shouldn't? Your property manager can help you to determine the depreciable life of some of these costs of improvements. And sometimes they're not even determined by your property manager, they're determined by the IRS or your local tax authority in terms of carpet. Most times carpet has a depreciable life of 6 or 7 years. And if the tenant damages one room of the carpet or one corner of the room of the carpet, and we charge them to replace all the carpet, it doesn't feel fair to the tenant if that carpet was 10 years old that they damaged. Even if it was in good condition when they received it, if it's 10-year-old carpet, it really has no depreciable life left. And therefore, charging the tenant to replace the carpets in its entirety feels very unfair and might be seen as unfair if it were to go to a small claims court or legal dispute. The real goal as a landlord is avoid small claims court and disputes. Landlords rarely win the damages that they want to win if it goes to a small claims court. Oftentimes the courts are slanted towards favoring tenants in these scenarios, and courts usually see these things as, was it due to misuse, abuse, or negligence of a tenant responsibility to the lease? Not, did you have to repaint a wall after 4 or 5 years because there was picture holes in the wall? So it becomes very tricky. Does this mean that we need to be stronger with our enforcement with tenants? Or does this mean we need to reframe as landlords and property managers how we see damages? Again, damages are not physical damages to the property, they're financial costs to repair the property. If a tenant punches a hole in the wall, clearly they are responsible for the cost of the repair of the wall. That is not normal use, and it would be abuse of the property. We can't just tell the tenant, well, we're going to bill you $200 for the hole in the wall out of your deposit arbitrarily. We actually need to find out how much it costs to have the repair made, for the landlord to pay for the repair to be made, and then to bill the tenant's security deposit for the actual cost of the repair. So there is no arbitrary process of, oh, well, I was going to replace the carpets with hardwood floors anyway when I came back, but because the tenant damaged the carpet, I'm going to take $1,000 out of their deposit to help me pay for the hardwood floors. That's when you start to get into significant legal disputes and territory that it's just not a fair or place of integrity to be in as a landlord. The important thing is to rely on whoever is doing your inspection to compare it to the move-in inspection. So very important that a good observational report with pictures is made as the basis for which the tenant receives the property, and that's what we're comparing when the tenant is moving out of the property.